Three, two, one, and we are rocking and rolling. Ladies and gents, welcome back to the channel. Today, I am joined by a man who spent 3 decades on the front line of the police force, specialising in the world of armed response, road death investigation, and VIP protection. This is a man who spent his career very often being first at the scene of fatal road car crashes, witnessing suffering and death at very close proximity, and often tasked with the heartbreaking job of giving people the worst news of their life, that their loved ones had passed away. When he wasn't doing this, he'd be taking part in 140 mile per hour car chases or providing VIP protection for members of the royal family, including the Queen. One day, he even sank while following David Cameron around in a kayak. 30 years experiencing the very best and the very worst of humanity. It's an absolute pleasure to be joined today by former police sergeant Harry Tangye. Harry, welcome.
Hello, welcome, Seb. How are you? Thank you.
I'm very good.
Me.
Thank you for joining me. It took us a little while, but we got here in the end, and it's great to be sitting down to have this conversation.
Good. Pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing some of your best stories, good and bad. But first, let's go back to the start. Where did it all begin?
It began very near to where I am now. I'm actually sitting in the house where I was brought up from 4 years old to 18. It's a little cottage. It's actually my parents, if you go back, my dad was sort of skipped a generation. There was 26 years difference between my dad and my mum, and he was a Spitfire pilot. So if you get a gauge, I'm 53. He was born in 1909, so he had me at 60. 4 kids in 5 years. So I know I wasn't an accident, unless he was very careless. And we had land. We had no money, but we had land, and we had no mortgage, and we had a small house. We were all crammed in here, and we were on the North Cornish coast, and life was great. And I knew from 10 years old, I went from wanting to hang on the back of dust cart lorries, because then in those days, they hung on the back and they got dragged along, which was before health and safety days, and it was just looked amazing. So I wanted to do that. And then 10 years old, I applied for the police. I wrote a letter.
At the age of 10?
And I got a reply. I got a lovely reply from an inspector at Newquay Police Station. I don't know who he was, but I kept the letter for many years. And he was really sweet. And he said, please come and reply in another 9 years' time. We'd love to see you. And so I did.
So his response, the kindness and the friendliness of his response is probably part of the reason that you actually ended up doing it, because a lot of kids want to be a lot of things at the age of 10, and that can change from the age of 5 to the age of 10, the age of 15. But his response may have really been a catalyst towards it happening, would you say?
Oh, without a doubt. And it's sort of a lesson I took on, that if ever I was asked by someone by private message or by police cadets or somebody wanting to, a little bit of advice about what's it like in the police? Can I go and, should I go in the police and things like that? And I always will give them time on that, because it's just important, because I was given that time, and it really, if it was sort of, if I didn't get a reply back, I might have wandered on to something else, I might have, or if I got a rather negative reply back, I might have just been put off the whole idea.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's amazing how a little small gestures, small pieces of effort in a wholesome, helpful direction really can be all that people need to give them that gentle nudge in all areas of life, really.
Exactly that. Yeah, and it just seemed, I think the reason I wanted I think we all join for blue lights and fast cars is basically what we all really join. You got a little bit of that community stuff that we're supposed to be doing as well. But no, that comes into as a very big point. But you just got a little bit hiding your camera there. I don't know if it's meant to be that paper.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, thanks.
You're clear without it. That's good.
Yeah, I'm clear about it.
Yeah.
It is a funny one being a policeman, because you often hear people grow up and they become an IT software developer or a window cleaner or whatever, and they always say, I've got to be honest, I didn't dream of being an IT software developer when I was growing up. But policeman is one of those sort of 5 or 6 jobs that you can ask kids when they're really young, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it would be doctor, fireman, policeman, and maybe a couple of others. So you're one of the few people that are actually going and doing one of those jobs that many little kids want to do.
It is. I think maybe, I don't know. Maybe it is. It's about when you get, the toy cars and the blue lights, and it's different. You're going to exciting things, and that never stopped. In 30 years, I didn't know what I was going to go to for the next. I say I don't. You in the police and paramedics and so on. You don't. If you're fire, you're probably not going to be going anywhere. But no, if you're in the police, you don't know what you're going to be doing in the next 10 years for the rest of your service. In the next 10 minutes, rather, for the rest of your service.
Right.
It might be nothing, or it could be the job of your career.
Right. Yeah. No. And I suppose that's why it's a pretty huge decision, I imagine, joining the police, because I can see the appeal of it, and you can elaborate on this, of course, but. I can imagine that the appeal is sort of you've got a life of duty, responsibility, you're protecting people, and that will give you a feeling of meaning and I imagine status to some extent, but you're also choosing a life of hassle and stress and conflict as well, right? I mean, it seems like it must be quite a stressful, difficult job dealing with, because people don't usually call the police when something's going well, do they?
No. I think it's all relative.
Right.
Yes, some people would be horrified. I mean, I would be first at a scene of a double fatal with 3 badly injured people screaming, and with cars on their roofs and witnesses screaming and children and trauma. And you've got to sort of gain some control over that. But you do get trained and experience, and you are coaxed along with other people, and you sort of learn that. And yet, if you're an IT consultant, you've got a problem, which is a massive issue, that if you don't get it fixed, it's going to have massive repercussions for the company further on and so on. You're going to lose that contract. There's just as much pressure. I think what I find is the real privilege is that I used to go into places where nobody else would be allowed. You're trusted to be, even if it was domestic. You're going into someone's life, someone's house, the trauma which they try to keep hidden from other people, and that you are then asking them the most intimate details about their lives in order to try to shape it and try to get something so they don't go around in a vicious circle. And you use your experience from all those hundreds of other domestics you've been to go, look, there's a way out of this. We can sort this, but you're not going about it a healthy way at the moment. So it is that the humanity side of things, which is a real privilege. And so that takes over the fast cars and the blue lights to a certain extent. You get that job satisfaction from either getting closure to a family who's lost a loved one, or just trying to figure out the most traumatic part of their lives at that time, really. So yeah, I'd say it's really a privilege, really.
Yeah. So would you say that that human aspect of it, you just mentioned, it kind of overtakes the fast cars and the blue lights, the human aspect of it, that must have been a real internal process to undergo over a period of 30 years. I imagine that your ability to speak to people improved, your ability to deal with the difficult emotions yourself improved. How was the process? Let's be specific. Let's talk about the responsibility of telling someone that their loved ones had passed away, which, am I correct in saying you must have done that many times throughout your career?
Yeah, numerous times. But it was especially before family liaison officers, and they took a lot of that burden on. But yeah, I would, if I was a fatal road traffic collision, I mean, it might be in the hospital where you're telling relatives, but if you're a fatal road traffic collision and it's that hurry up and wait situation where you've secured the scene, the injured have gone, you've done all you can, but now you're waiting for collision investigators, vehicle examiners, you're looking at, and they're coming from quite a distance. So you're just holding the scene. It's that time now that I have to go. I used to then go and say, well, I'll go and do the next of kin. Because you've got to do that as soon as possible, even though they're dead. But no relative wants to know that their loved one died 5 hours ago. They want to know quite soon. And I used to find, I found that my throat would just go really dry. And it is that adrenaline, it's the nervousness. And you think, okay, you've got to do it right. And you've got to be quite clear and straightforward with it. I write about it in the book. I did a novel, but my novel is basically, I did a Firearms and Fatals, which was an autobiography. And then and these are the second best bits, but I turned it into a novel. And one of those is actually giving a death message. And I remember the first time, and I just spoke and nothing came out. And I thought, and then panic set in, because I thought, oh my God, I'm trying to speak. I try to say the most important thing to these people and I can't get out. And I swore from then on, I would always have a bottle of water with me, one glug, and then go in and tell them. It's simple little things like that, really.
Even thinking about having to do that kind of when I was thinking about it yesterday, it kind of gave me goosebumps and made me well up a little bit. And I don't think I've ever had the responsibility of having to give someone that news. You recollect the first time that you did that? How regular was that? How regularly did you have to do that throughout the month or the year?
Oh, I don't know, probably 30 times or something, I guess. But the family liaison officers, I remember one on my section was up to 90. And some of them had 5 cases on at one go. So you have to be very careful when you got a phone call about a case that they didn't mix one up, because there was a horror story of one where they said, so, and about it was of relatives, and say, I'm just ringing about John Smith sort of thing. And the family liaison officer says, oh, yes, I believe the coroner has said his inquest is in July. And they went, my God, is he dead? He was just very, very seriously injured. And it was, oh my God, I've just mixed up John Smith with John,
Oh no.
Because often they're driving around, they're on the cuff. They're just, so it's those things you just got to be so careful of. But I found it okay because my dad died when I was 18. So I had this thing with death where I sort of knew that when the day after they died, you look out the window and people will know this, and life is going on. You think, how dare you? The postman's still delivering a post. There's the letter. How dare you? Do you not know what catastrophe has just happened in the world? And then you find that people just dodge it, don't they? Dodge the subject. They don't want to talk about your dad because they don't know how you'll react. They don't know if you'll burst into tears. It's all a bit awkward. What do you say? How are you? How are you feeling? And I found it was better just to hit it head on and say, well, tell me about them. What were they like? And people love to do that. Generally, people like to do that. And if they don't want to talk about them, they'll let you know.
Yeah, we've got a very kind of awkward way of talking about death, and we tiptoe around the subject. But I actually had a very similar experience to yourself, because my dad was 50 when I was born, and then I was 21 when he passed away. So there's some parallels there. And I recall when my dad passed away, feeling the same way. People would kind of tiptoe around it and this and that. And actually, it was much easier when people would just say, like, "How are you doing since your dad died?" And even word it like that, and that you were able to actually talk about it. That being said, we're talking now about the way that you might talk to someone in the few weeks or the few months after they passed away. But I suppose actually giving someone the news in that moment is a slightly different task. I mean, to what extent do you get guidance from the police in regards to how you're supposed to break the news?
I mean, the best guidance, you did, if I remember right, you do get sort of, right, this is what, or you tend to do it more if you're in the traffic department or that side of things anyway. And then you do tend to sort of, the guidance I remember, and it's very good, and is basically you need to get it out, and don't say they've passed away. Don't say they're in the hospital. You need to say they're dead. You need to say they're in the mortuary, because otherwise you're talking to them for 5 minutes but they're clinging on to every hope they can. And then they'll go, so, how badly injured is he? And you go, oh my God, I've just been telling you he's dead for half an hour, but I've been skirting around the subject, not actually saying he's dead. I'm afraid, fits description with the driving license. We believe that unfortunately your son has died in this road traffic collision, and his body is now in Derriford mortuary or something like that. You have to be quite clear with that, so that it does sort of, and then everything after that will be a sort of a grey blur for them. They won't take anything in after that, so you just need to give them time. I'm in one family, the lad actually committed suicide by riding his motorcycle into the wooden lattice work behind the supermarket. And so I went to the house, and the woman, his mother, was there, and he had mental health problems, and he tried before. I didn't know, and she had a tea towel. Maybe she was hitting me with a tea towel, and she was hanging off me, literally buckled her legs. And then about 10 minutes later, the door opened and this huge man in builder's gear came in. I thought, oh crap, because and all he said was, oh, he's done it, has he? He's finally done it, has he? And he was like that. And it was almost like, yes, it's a bit shock or whatever, but it's that realization that, okay, this is the end then, is it? It's finally here. So it's the differences in reaction are phenomenal, even in the same family. And you don't know what you're going to get. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And I actually just had goosebumps when you were telling me that story, because it's just that woman will remember that moment for the rest of her life. And that man will. Well.
And the family liaison officers say, I'm initially the worst person they ever know, the person they despise the most, who's given them the worst news that they could ever want to hear. And then you become their best friend because you guide them through the process. And it might even be involving a court case or something like that. And so that person, the family liaison officer, then is part of the case, but then guides them through, introduce them to the coroners, any issues, any problems, property, that side of things. And so suddenly they've got that sort of that crutch to rely on, to hang on. And yeah, so you go from one extreme to another, really.
To what extent in that moment is it your duty or responsibility to offer any comfort?
It's interesting. I mean, you're human. If you join the police, I mean, yeah, these horrendous stories you're hearing, especially in around London at the moment and things like that, these horrendous cases. I'm always interested to find out how long people have been in the police. It's usually quite a short time. They don't usually hide in the police for too long if they're of a criminal nature or if they're in for the wrong reasons. And there are concerns with vetting and things like that. But generally people want to join the police because it's a bit cheesy, but they do want to help the community. They want to do something a bit positive and drive fast cars and blue lights. But it is quite empowering when you see, one of the most, with all the jobs I used to do, one of the most satisfying things would be helping a frightened young family in a car that had broken down or crashed with very little damage, no injuries, but they're scared to death because the traffic's going wah, wah, wah. And then you can come along, I'd come along and then I'd say, well, you can't park here, and just totally take the stress out of it. Say, don't worry, it's bent metal, plastic, don't worry, you'll be fine. Insurance is for it. We'll sort you out. We'll get recovery. We'll get so-and-so. And they're like, oh my God, my world has not ended then. That's fine. Everything's fine again. And that is just really satisfying. And that's really a really good part of the job that was. And it was a tiny thing, wasn't it? Silly little thing. And yet I've stood next to the Queen 5 times. But I would say that the one of the best times is doing those sorts of jobs, because there's usually very little paperwork as well, which is always a bonus. When you're just helping people out.
You mentioned the type of people that join the police. It strikes me as, in fact, the reason that we became connected on Twitter is because you saw the video I made after the Bristol riots, which was
brilliant video.
Thank you.
Brilliant. The way you turned the crowd around, this angry crowd, and you go, so what do you think? And they go, oh yeah, no, actually, police aren't too bad. Yeah, you're taking that stereotype out of people, where people criticize the police for stereotyping. You should never treat everyone the same. And yet the public are brilliant at stereotyping the police. And say, well, they're all 135,000 of them.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason I was inspired to make that video is because although I do believe, obviously, in criticizing the police if necessary and holding the police accountable, it also strikes me as fairly obvious that the majority of police are kind of well-meaning members of society who want to do a good job and then go home. But on the topic of that caricature that is held by some people, that the police are, it obviously is a ridiculous stereotype, en masse at least, that the police are power-hungry authoritarians who got bullied in school and want to throw their weight around.
Yeah.
Is there any truth to it on a small scale? Did you meet many bad eggs in your time in the police? Is there you mentioned the standard personality profile is someone who's well-meaning and wants to do a good job. Is there a standard personality profile of a minority of people that you think are a bit power-hungry?
Okay, I mean, it's an interesting question, and I'll be as honest as I can with that, because since doing Twitter, I've got quite a big spread of information coming in from all different forces, including the Met, county forces, city forces. Now, I'm a county force, Devon and Cornwall Police. So we tend to be very busy because there's less of us. So we're always very busy all day, and we all have the crime, we have mental health issues, we have drug issues, county lines, that side of things. We don't have the level of gun crime that other city forces have. But basically, you'll get what I have found, not only from force to force, but also country to country, is cops are cops are cops are cops. You can get on with another cop from America in a bar because they've got generally the same sort of ethos. What I'm worried about, there are definitely some issues out there, without a doubt, Seb. There is something going on. And I don't know if it's vetting. I don't know. I think part of it is really bad supervisor stuff. As a sergeant, so you've got PC sergeant, and the sergeant is the one that looks after the family, the section. Okay. And if you've got someone who's a little bit, yeah, well, what's the point? You know, why do we bother doing this? Because so-and-so, so-and-so. If they're allowed to fester and get and allowed to gain traction, then other people can get onto that, you know, and then suddenly what could be considered inappropriate doesn't feel inappropriate now because it's just banter, isn't it? It's just a laugh, isn't it? And the problem is, I think there's so many acting sergeants. There's nothing wrong with acting sergeants. I was an acting sergeant. But if you're an acting sergeant, so in other words, you're not an officially promoted sergeant, you're a PC, but because you've done the exam, you haven't done the interview yet, the interview yet, promotion board, you're doing the acting sergeant. And it may be for a day, it may be for 6 months. It doesn't help when you're trying to chastise someone. Look, you're looking a bit scruffy, mate. Can you just, did you wash your shirt, you know, or whatever? And then the next day you're sitting next to them as an equal to them. And that's a problem. That's why if we were acting sergeants, we would move section. So you were a fresh face and you could take some sort of authority there. So I think there's a little bit of, and the problem is, I mean, some force, I think, was it Northampton? I know the Met is similar, but 70% of their workforce is under 25 or something, or less than 3 years, or, you know, certainly in a few years' time, it'll be like that. Very worrying. Because usually there was an old, mature sea dog who was in the section who would whip the whippersnappers into shape if they were getting a little bit cocky or they were getting a bit. And I fear, because the money's come out of it, there's the pension's rubbish now, there's more contributions for longer time, for less pension at the end of it. It's not considered a vocation anymore. It's a job. So if I get fired, who cares? I didn't expect to work here more than 5-10 years anyway. That could be a problem. So I think it is that there's definitely around. I can tell you now, I didn't know until I joined the job. Do they beat people up in the cells? Right? Do they? No, they didn't. And they treated them like complete saints, because if the custody lot knew that if they treated them well, they wouldn't get any crap back. You know, they wouldn't get them pooing in the cells. They wouldn't get them being noisy all night. So there's no point. There's cameras, there's audio everywhere, on me, on buildings, and the police buildings. Everything's monitored. So if you are racist, if you're homophobic, you ain't going to last very long. It's about the worst place you could possibly be. But I'm not naive enough to think there's pockets and clusters. But there's also, it's very difficult to combat this. The only information you're going to be getting is negative. There is not going to be good work being presented in the media. It is. So it is like, constant bang, 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 bang. And people are still listing Hillsborough. A lot of police officers weren't even born then. Stop taking it out on officers who weren't even born to say how corrupt they were because of Hillsborough, because of Stephen Lawrence inquiries and things. That a lot of police officers weren't even born. You know, I mean, it was like 20 years now. So we're on that edge there. They were toddlers. They were in, come on, give the new lot a break. Stop beating them with that same stick. They're a completely different beast now.
Do Do you think the culture has changed a lot since the 80s? Like specifically, you mentioned race and homophobia, and there's a big question to be asked over the extent to which we're having these conversations now, because when things like certain elements of hate speech get policed and you're questioning whether or not it's a waste of time, the police are investigating certain tweets on Twitter. But let's not focus on that for a minute, but it would be good to get back to that. But let's quickly just focus on, to what extent do you think the culture has changed for the better as it pertains to racism, homophobia, hate crimes, that sort of stuff since the 80s?
I think it changes with society. So people say about the police, well, where do we get the police from? We get the police from society. We don't put them through a filter where we think, let's put them in the racist filter, because they're far too nice at the moment. We've got to join the police, haven't they? We've got to have them in the police. They can't do their work unless they're racist. So they are from society, and not only from society, we vet them from society. So we get the bad ones out, the ones with criminal records, with violence and stuff like that. Those who aren't sort of emotionally stable enough, perhaps, those who have tendencies with far extreme right or extreme left views or whatever. So we get those out. And then what are we left with? And you're still saying they're worse than society, then we've got a big problem with society. Then I know myself, and I can only speak for my force. And I have people in my section from London and all sorts. If it was even an innocent joke about anything that could remotely mention the word black or something like that, people wouldn't say it. They were like, they felt uncomfortable. It's unsafe ground. So I knew that they would never, I've never heard a racist joke. People won't believe that. Never heard a racist joke in the police, homophobic joke or whatever. People would feel very uncomfortable. And the fact more so because they know that if they allowed that to carry on, then they would be drawn into it. Well, why didn't you challenge it? You can't say, oh, well, it's nothing to do with me anymore. And in fact, I had not about race, but I had certain concerns with people. Officers would come up to me and say, Sarge, I'm not happy with him. I'm a little bit concerned. I don't really want to, have it known that I've been the one who said. And I'd take a couple of the other guys out and say, oh, how's so-and-so going? I'm not entirely comfortable. I had to write 2 unhappy reports. One was about someone's mental health, where they were in a role that was considered quite dangerous, and I couldn't risk it. It was on the armed response side of things. They needed help. I got the cards off them, got the armories changed, put the reports in, and it was the best thing that could have happened for that person, and the people around them that needed to feel safe with them. So you have to, but then that takes quite a lot of positive supervisory stuff. And this is where I worry again. If you've just put someone in there who's got 2.5 years in service and they've got to face something like that, how more likely are they going to go, oh, I'm sure they're going to be all right. I'll let someone else sort that out. Do you know what I mean? And that's where we get into dangerous situations. Absolutely.
So you make the perfectly clear point that policing doesn't exist within a vacuum, and the type of people that join policing is a reflection of society. So I suppose as society has changed since the 80s, the culture within the police has also changed since the 80s. So do you fear that we might have swung too far the other way in regards to it seems like the police in some instances are now policing offence, which is subjective. Like there are people calling on the police to investigate Jimmy Carr for an unpleasant joke that he made. And also police are investigating like rude tweets and stuff. And I'd be interested to know, what do you think the attitude within the police force is to that? Do you think that they think it's a waste of time? Is it a PR exercise? Is it an overreach of what the police are supposed to be there for?
Yeah, it is an overreach for what the police were supposed to be for. The officers on the front line are there to help people who genuinely need it. The hate crime was brought in for the mother and her disabled children who were murdered.
Could you tell me about that? I don't know about that. Could you elaborate on that?
Oh, you'll have to forgive me for I've forgotten the names.
Okay, no, yeah,
I always feel terrible about. But there was this woman who had a couple of children, and she was she was slow learning. She was a vulnerable person. And she was getting on with her life, and the children were safe, and she had help with social services. But the local bullies got onto her, and they made their life hell. So she ended up killing her children and herself. And it was shown the fact that the harassment laws just weren't sufficient enough, because unless something had happened, already happened, it was too late. But that's when things could be done. Sticks and stones weren't considered enough. So they brought the hate laws in for that reason. And unfortunately, you've got some people within the police who spend very little time on the front line. They're probably very clever people academically. They rush up through the ranks. So they have no idea what it's like. They start believing the drivel they can hear about stop search and what police are doing out there, because they've only got the media to go from. They've not got their own experiences. And if they did have some experience themselves, it was an awful long time ago. So again, they've got one information from certain community leaders who are just saying the odd bad bits, exaggerating it, not giving the whole story. And so these police officers who are in these positions where they're not actually doing a lot of policing, they're doing an awful lot of meetings and making these big decisions. Or they're in departments where they're going to say, right, okay, is that technically a hate crime? Yes, that's technically a hate crime, right, okay. And there was a terrible thing in the police where it's not even down to common sense. It's if the complainant felt that it was a crime, then you had to crime it. And I have a very good feeling that this is why the anti-vax thing was crimed, because somebody said, well, they think it's a crime, I better crime it. And so they switched that around as, the police are investigating it as a crime, That was the problem. And it's the National Crime Recording Standards. The police were beaten over with it because you're not criming. Do you know I'm meant to crime someone if I'm on a Saturday night as a police officer and somebody walks by with a black eye and I said, oh, what's happened? Oh, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, do you want to give me your details? No. I've got to crime that as an anonymous person, somebody who's described as something, had a black eye, clearly has been assaulted, and crime that as an ABH, undetected ABH. Oh, look, so many percentage of policing crimes don't get convicted. Do you see what I mean? So unfortunately, what God brings into that, you get these people who look at yes, technically it's a crime. And some of them have got very little experience and practical knowledge and common sense, quite frankly. And so, they're investigating these things which are ridiculous. And at some point, you've got to have some sort of... The police are far too busy with the other stuff. They're not able to attend all burglaries or all assaults and things like that. So once it gets into a bullying stage where it's really deteriorating people's lives, but then what they would find is they're just using it as a weapon and saying, it was a hate crime. Right, now I'll get it sorted. And I'll use that as a revenge against you because you were angry with me and you swore at me. So I'm going to crime that as a hate crime. You've got to crime it as a hate crime. Ha! Even though you were the arse and you needed to be sworn at. And you needed to just grow up a bit. But unfortunately, technically, I've got to crime it because if I don't, I'll get into trouble.
I don't know if you saw what's been going in the news surrounding Jimmy Carr the last couple of days. Have you been aware of the little scandal around him?
I have, and I haven't actually heard the joke. Have you seen the joke?
I can tell you.
I know he is full on in there, but I do think comedy needs to have a exemption certificate. I really do. Otherwise, we're in a whole host of poo.
Well, the whole point of humor is, we don't even need to go into that. It's so obvious. But I can tell you the joke. Hopefully, I'm not going to get cancelled from YouTube. He basically said, and you might want to prepare how much you're willing to laugh or not laugh to this joke, because it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
Oh my god, I've seen some of them are terrible.
Prepare for a poker face. But I suppose it's not about whether or not the joke is offensive or distasteful. It's about whether or not the police should be investigating it. He said, no one ever wants to talk about the Romani people that were slaughtered in the Holocaust because they don't want to talk about the positives.
Ouch. Okay. Yeah.
So, I find offensive jokes pretty funny. I'm not going to lie. I find things funny just because they're offensive sometimes, but...
And I do, because I think it's so shocking.
Yeah.
It is so shocking. How would I feel? I'm Cornish lad. All right. And I would, people take a mick about the Cornish. I always joke and say, well, can't you tell I'm Cornish by my accent? And they say, no, bloody can't, because I come from Newquay, which is so many mixes. And there's very few Cornish in Cornwall now, really, with the accent, with a strong accent. And we're actually an independent. We are an independent. I say to you, I'm allowed to be as offended as you now, when I'm talking to someone who is from a minority group, with friends, who I have. And so I don't get offended by that stuff, I'll tell you now that the common thing that they joke about the Cornish, and they say you can use Norfolk if you like as well, is they say the only virgins in Cornwall are the ones who can outrun their brothers. Now, I don't get offended by that. I don't get offended. I just can't retort back and say, well, my sister's quite attractive in fairness. And they're like, no.
And you can run very fast as well, so there's no reason for you to be offended by that one.
But do you know what? Why are we being offended? I think it gets to a point when it then moves on to another stage where you're trying to instigate someone to create hate and blah, blah, blah. If it comes to anything like that, then should the police be investigating it? Hell no, they shouldn't be investigating it. If you don't want to see that sort of humour, don't see that humour. If you start thinking that actually he's starting a right-wing group and he's causing a few problems and he's going to it caused people to then start burning houses down, that's when you step in. That's when the police step in. Not freaking joke, which will have no aftermath after they've left that auditorium.
And it seems like people are determined not to look at the context. Like, as you say, if there was someone who was leading a sort of extreme political group and they were regularly using rhetoric like that, making jokes like that, and whipping up some degree of hatred. I mean, even unfortunately, or fortunately, because I do believe in free speech, but either way, even that wouldn't be illegal. But like you say, if that had the opportunity to turn into something that was going to be more sinister, that was going to lead to violence, then fair enough. But Jimmy Carr is extremely famous, extremely well-known comedian who has a history of making offensive jokes, and the number of people that were harmed at that joke is zero.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, he talks about paedophilia and things that is far more cringy. I mean, I tell you, my wife's family, my wife was, her great-grandfather was Billy Smart from Billy Smart Circus. It was a generation ago. It was very well famous. There were very many gypsies. So that her family, she wouldn't find that offensive, I'm sure of it. Exactly. Because I just said that the amount of people that harms is zero, but I can also imagine the people that would be offended by it might hear me say that and might think to themselves, oh, hang on, but it's easy for you to say that because you're not a member of the traveller community, and perhaps if you were a member of the Romany traveller community, that you would find that upsetting. But I mean, I don't think that most people are so delicate. I think most people are able to take jokes, even offensive jokes, even distasteful jokes, even about their own demographic, in a lot of cases. So I think the people that are intent on outrage are more likely to be just people who are almost professionally offended about a wide range of things on behalf of other people. And I don't think the police should be getting involved with that myself. No, definitely not.
And I do think offence is entirely subjective. In fact, I wish I'd prepared more examples for this interview. Unfortunately, I don't really have any to hand, but I do think that there's been a lot of police investigation into hate speech, and I've seen examples of it which just really shouldn't. I mean, at the very
one in court case recently, wasn't it, where the judge said that it's a bloody ridiculous, and quite right so. This person got targeted, and it's used as a weapon. Again, the criminals are using it because they know how to get a reaction from the police. So I'm an arsehole. I've shouted at you. You've called me something. I go to the police. You get, whether they think it's a crime or not, it is a crime on the system with your name on it. Ha ha. Brilliant. You get a DBS check. It's on there. Okay, it's not conviction. It wouldn't be. It would have to be a certain levels. But if you join the police, it would be looked at. Great. What a weapon to use. And I'm the arse. It's dangerous. Really dangerous.
Have you ever been arrested?
No, to think I'm going to have to think about it. Have I on a million scenarios with armed response scenarios and cuffed very roughly and thrown to the floor? No, not genuinely. I haven't.
It must be embarrassing for a policeman if they do get arrested. Has that ever happened? One of your colleagues has been.
Oh, mate, I'm so looking forward to it. The freedom I have now out of the police. I said the minute I stepped out of the police, if I was to do something now, I would get cautioned. Whereas when I'm in the police, I'd probably get sent to prison as letting down the authority of law and order and things. Now I'm just a civilian.
Do you think
it's amazing? I feel so free.
Do you think you'd have harsher treatment if you break the law as a member of the police?
First of all, you lose your job without a question. Secondly,
would you?
Because it's.
Sorry, what would you lose your job for? Just breaking the law once, or?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about anything involving dishonesty or aggression, for example, was it a momentary lapse? Was there certain things? Yes, you can hold your job, but you'll get a final written warning or something like that. If it was straight assault and any conviction, be it a common assault or whatever, you can't really be a police officer with a common assault. It's probably a real sprinkling of examples, but you've got to take each one of those on their individual cases, you know. That's another thing. People say, oh, there's so many police officers with assault convictions. Yeah, look at each one, you idiots, you know, stop looking at your statistics. But yeah, you would, to anything dishonest, you can't have dishonest cops running around.
But what about more minor offences, such as like, I don't know, okay, so you're a policeman, yeah?
I want to know what your minor offence is then. Come on,
well, I don't know. Okay, so you were first at the scene of car crashes. You would take part in car chases. Would you ever speed now? Do you speed? Is that something, or because you're a policeman, do you believe in law and order? I only ever drive at 70 miles an hour, or what?
I've had a Kawasaki ZZR 1200cc motorbike, and I know it goes very quickly up to 70 miles an hour. I have no idea what it does after that. But to be honest, as well, Seb, I got all that out of me in the police. So when I'm out of the police, I don't really need to do that anymore. It just doesn't. It's using my own fuel, you know. And I've got a 3-litre Mercedes still, you know. So I'm not bothered about. Yeah, I do 85. I keep under 90 at all points, all times, and I stick around 85. The cops, we wouldn't touch anyone for about 85 anyway. It was only if it was pouring down with rain or whatever, but. So again, there is discretion used. I mean, it's these speeding cameras which are the pain, aren't they? Where they start doing people for 54 and a 50 or something silly, you know. So they don't do anyone any favors, I think. But yeah, no. Generally, I am. But then you could say, well, 1 mile an hour is breaking the law, isn't it? So yeah, of course, break the law. It's all relative, isn't it? Really.
On the topic of using discretion, when you're operating your day-to-day duties as a police officer, if you see someone breaking the law, is it always your duty to arrest them? Because the reason I ask this is because often in Bristol, we have big festivals, carnivals, celebrations in the city centre where there's tens of thousands of people there, and the police are often milling around and they'll walk past people smoking like massive joints. And cannabis is obviously a criminal offence that people don't really take too seriously these days. And I think that's a good thing. But I do almost find it interesting when I see policemen just walk past people smoking weed, because even though I don't think they should be arrested, obviously they are blatantly breaking the law. And you see a lot of that in Bristol. So I'm just wondering, so what is the line between having to act on arresting someone and just using discretion?
Okay, so something like that, there'll be a briefing at the beginning and there'll be somebody saying, right, these are the resources we have. What is our main aim and objective? The main aim is safety of the public at that point. And if they arrested every person with a spliff or other minor thing, with an argument, with a swearing and shouting or pushing or whatever like that, they, first of all, an arrest would be the last resort. So very few people get arrested as such now, unless it's something where they need to tie the evidence down there and then with the person, be interviewed, compared with another account with another person. So there's a lot more restrictions now with arrests. They will ask, why did you feel you needed to arrest this person? Why couldn't you voluntarily attend them at a station tomorrow? You know, and if you could, then you're in trouble. So fewer people, to use the right word, are arrested than they used to be. So basically, they arrest them for all the spliff sort of thing, and you've lost your resources straight away because you need two people to take one person away to take to the things and then to book them in. But there's a queue there. So you're waiting there hours, waiting. Who's policing the public? So now what's happening? Oh, you've got pickpockets, you've got robberies, you've got gangs actually now fighting each other openly and stabbing each other because they haven't seen a police officer around. So it's what are your aims and objectives? What's your priorities? And okay, we're going to have to turn a blind eye to spliff smoking stuff because the end game is far bigger than that, and people could die, if things get out of hand, which they would inevitably have done in the past with large crowds.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It does make me think of the Colston statue when it got torn down in Bristol last year. The police didn't. Was it last year or was it the year before last? No,
was it last year or year before? It was flown, I think.
It was last year.
Before,
it makes me think of the Colston statue because the police clearly made the decision not to intervene, and because there were thousands and thousands of people tearing that statue down. They would have needed a lot of police to do something about that had they wanted to.
I wasn't there. So I really can't judge it I didn't have all the information coming in in the briefing room. However, I would think the message that sends is a dangerous one because it shows lawlessness, and you'd have hoped there would have been preparations and resources available around the corner. I think policing has got far too many politicians in policing. Too many where it's, we don't want it to look bad. So we've got a whole I've spoken to PSUs live, public order units, full thing, seething. We're around the corner and our mates are getting shouted at, screamed at, nose to nose by these jobs, and they're backed off, and the bosses are saying, don't send the PSU yet in, don't, it looks bad. And they've lost touch with the policing. They're becoming more political. They shouldn't be thinking about that side of things. So for me, it was very uncomfortable to look at, to see, because then people say, oh, we can do that in London. Oh, we can do it in Plymouth. Oh, we can do it in Glasgow. Brilliant. And didn't look good at all.
Yeah, it seemed kind of obvious to me that although there's a perfectly reasonable conversation to be had about why you wouldn't want the statue of someone that was so closely associated with the slave trade in the city centre, that to me was a sort of a very different conversation from the extent to which like you say, lawlessness should be policed, because no one actually wants to live in a society with lawlessness. No one actually wants to live in a society where people of differing opinions and differing political persuasions can do what they want. And everyone would realize that if certain monuments or buildings were attacked that they did like.
Yeah, we live in a democratic, supposedly. It's getting more and more that the ones who shout loudest get their way. And then, of course, it's council culture. And then you're not even allowed to discuss a subject, because if you disagree with somebody who is talking about, say, race or something, Black Lives Matter, that side of thing, if you disagreed with them, that meant you were racist. And then people weren't interested in what you had to say. They're just interested in what people said you said. It's just too risky. You just can't do it. Can't do it. I don't think you can even now. So that art of conversation is dead. And so what you do get is lots of people who shout very loudly, who are very ill-informed, probably who are just as, yes, that discussion needs to be had. It's so closely related to the slave industry. But then are you happy to use the buildings and the hospitals that they produce in the schools? Or should you tear them down too? Or there's an argument, well, okay, have the thing, because that's fine, but then we need to get the statue, or should we remember them? This is the person, but we should remember our history because of the negativity. But that was history then. That was acceptable then. It shouldn't have been in a fair society. It's these discussions we should be had, but no, it's taken out of the equation. So the right to vote has gone, the right to discussion has gone. We're taking it down. And I think probably there's lots of leaders out there who are very scared to intervene and do anything. They didn't want their name at the top of that as the blame, because they would have just been accused of defending the slave trade, quite frankly. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I definitely agree with the point you made about the the vocal minority who are peddling grievances and outrage are certainly making the conversations very difficult to have for anyone that doesn't share their exact opinions on all issues. But anyway, moving away from that quickly, I'd be interested in talking to you about something else. There's a partially reasonable stereotype on the left. I don't know if you think that it's partially reasonable, but I think there's a partially reasonable stereotype on the left of police officers being kind of unquestioning servants of the establishment. I live in Bristol, which is a very left-wing city, so I see a lot of information on Instagram, Twitter, in local media, amongst people I know, that are pointing to the new protest legislation, and they're saying, if the police are telling you when you can protest, how long you can protest for, where you can protest, that it's not a protest anymore. And then people also make the point of sort of certain movements in the last century or so, sort of women's rights, for example, that where if these laws existed, they wouldn't have been able to protest in the same way. So I do understand the concern, but like you say, there does need to be a sort of middle ground, and I don't know what that middle ground is. Sorry, yeah, go on.
Well, as at the moment, they're not able to police it all, and there's more and more and more happening, and they're getting more violent, and the cops getting injured, then they're having all their rest days cancelled. They're leaving the jobs in the droves. They've got better things to do for more money, and not have to turn up for work and be abused, not get caught on TV. All the cameras waiting for that one baton strike, which zooms into an area which is career ending, which will rip you apart on social media, in the media, and so on. Suddenly it's why is the question. And it got ridiculous over the last couple of years with that. So like you say, I don't know what the answer is. You're just going to have to let, and then London comes to an absolute standstill. And so finance stops and whatever. And people say, well, the environment's very important and this, that, and the other. But should the whole country be held to ransom by the M25s and all this sort of thing? Should it be held to ransom constantly? Do you want that entire life to affect your income, the way you are? Should they be allowed to do that, or should there be some sort of organisation to it? And not being funny, if you've got enough people, there's an organised protest, you've got enough people doing it, and it surprises people, and it's enough to attract the media because look at the numbers here, they really upset some people. What's wrong with that? You just have to be anarchy, because you can always get examples of people who've broken the law and they turned out to be heroes. But there's plenty of others who didn't.
You're right. It's easy to point at the few revolutionaries who broke the law and history favored well, but it doesn't therefore mean that everyone that breaks the law
they all are.
That's what I was saying in my video after the Bristol riots. I was saying I don't think that these guys are on the same level of revolutionaries of the past. I disagree with the protest bill, or at least I understand the concerns around the protest bill, but I don't think these people setting fire to this police van are coming from a particularly righteous place. And I say that because I was kind of there around them, talking to them, and I was like, I think they're just enjoying setting fire to this police van. And that is different from civil rights movement, from women's rights movement, where they were extremely brave, extremely courageous, and they knew exactly why they were doing what they were doing. And I was down there at some of these Bristol riots, and I have no doubt it's the same in some other places. And they didn't really give me the impression that they knew what they were on about. And
that's often the case, isn't it? They don't understand the argument.
Well,
they just want to come along and buck the system, kick authority. They really don't understand the argument when you ask them the details.
Yeah, and as far as I can tell, that's where the reputation of the police, where it becomes extremely difficult for you guys to be able to uphold your reputation in any positive, meaningful way, because you'll see headlines like I think I saw you talking about one. It was about the Sarah Everard vigil. It was like police clash with mourners, but you also get it with everything else. So it will be like police called in to arrest climate change activists. That's a very simple headline. It's the type of headline you might see in The Guardian, and it kind of sends the message that the police are there to stop climate change activism happening because the police are unquestioning servants of the establishment who don't care about climate change. And actually, like, the details of it might be that the police maybe do care about climate change, or they do understand the cause, but they can't be having the M25 shut down for 3 hours. And how can the police can't come out of that looking good, really, can they?
No, and they're meant to be. And this is where I have a problem with PCCs. Now, I don't think there's one independent one in the country. So they soon got rid of that because they just didn't have the backing and the finance. So basically, you've now got political police. You know, they are being run by the police, or the police are desperately trying to be independent. But ultimately, there's thin line, is that basically we are in a democratic society. Whatever you think about your governing party with the prime minister, they were elected. Okay, you might disagree with it, that's fine. They were elected. They run the country. So they put and if they've got majority, they get the laws that go through. Now, the police are there to maintain law and order. If they're doing these laws and that's law and order, they are there to protect law and order. The fact that you disagree because you don't want the police to stop you protesting on the road, you're now a fascist who's helping the regime. No, they're helping a democratically voted in government in order that the government should be doing what the majority of the public in that country want them to do. And we have a system that if you don't like what they're doing, you vote them out the next time. Now, it is less and less effective, it seems, year by year, that we see this. Democracy doesn't really tend to work at the moment, I don't think. You know, again, it's the ones who shout the loudest, and we can't actually discuss and open conversations about things. That affects democracy. The fact that we're getting one-sided information about stuff all the time. We're getting those titles about stuff. Police kill 16-year-old in police chase. You know, it didn't say what they were chasing and, you know, why they were chasing. They had the option to stop if they liked. And do you now want police not to pursue criminals now? Is that what you want? You know, if that's the decision you want, then get it in, but then don't scapegoat them afterwards. So if you're getting all that one-sided information, it's not, how can you make a democratic decision on a flawed source of information?
Well, absolutely. And I think in a democratic society, criticizing the police when they deserve criticism, holding them accountable is really important, because how else can the police improve the work that they do unless they receive criticism from outside sources? But I do think that that it's you guys, you do have a thankless task in some respects, because you're called into very high intensity situations, a lot of drama, often a lot of aggression, conflict, confrontation, and then yet if you don't perform absolutely perfectly in that situation, you get absolutely lambasted.
And it's not even that. It's you've got to put, because all the recording, you sat in a parade room and stuff is generally recording somewhere, CCTV, custody, in your cars, it's in with the public, it's on the arrests. And you are, you know, you've got cops who've been assaulted, they've arrested the guy, they've still got the black eye, and the guy's laughing at them in their face the next morning because they're out of custody with a caution or something. And so he says something to that person, which is caught on camera, and then, which is a true account on this one. And then, of course, in the media, that this cop should be fired, the way he spoke to this poor youth. It's half the story. So, yeah, exactly. They've got to do that not only for that time in that protest, but also every second, every minute, every hour, every week, month, year of their 30-year career, if they want to make it through 30 years. And you've got to be like a robot then in that case, because you can't show any human reaction and lose it once or twice because you've just been to a suicide and a cop death the week before. And now you're dealing with some little scumbag who's got 22 pages of criminal record sheet, who's laughing at the system, and you say something inappropriate to him. And now you are the enemy on social media about this poor little person who was picked on by this big nasty brute. You know?
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of being at the Bristol, one of these Bristol riots last year, because I attended quite a few of the protests and a few of them turned violent. And there was a moment where dozens of police started charging at hundreds of protesters. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and they'd been sitting in this same road blocking the city centre for hours, and it started to turn a bit boozy and a bit violent. And the police, this was a week after the initial riots, and the police had obviously made the decision, we need to be a bit more heavy-handed at some point this evening if it gets out of hand, like it did last week. And there was a load of journalists there, myself included, obviously filming events, and obviously they wanted to get the best shots, the best photos. And so there's this moment where hundreds of police, or at least dozens of police anyway, are charging at hundreds of protesters, and everyone's running down the main road. And I got out the way, obviously, right? I mean, I was probably being a bit awkward at points, getting in the way a little bit, because I was trying to get my good videos, but I got out the way of getting barged over by a guy in a riot shield. But it was a very high intensity moment, a lot of objects being thrown, very chaotic. And there was this guy who works for a national newspaper. I can't remember what newspaper it was, and I don't remember his name either, which is probably for the best because I'd say it otherwise. But he was there with all of these police just charging at him. And he's going, I'm a journalist. And he just gets knocked. He gets knocked over with a riot shield, and it's like, well, it was about 10 feet away from me, and anyway, he puts this tweet. He put the video on Twitter, and it goes viral. It's hundreds of thousands of people saying, "Oh my God, police attacking innocent journalists. Journalists don't have the freedom to do their job. The police are getting out of hand." And I was thinking, I don't know about this. I was standing right next to the guy, and I thought he was an idiot. So I got out the way. I was about 10 feet away, and I remember seeing that guy waving his little card around, and I was thinking, I don't think this is going to go very well for you, mate, because it's just common sense. Like, it's just common sense. If you're a war correspondent, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't go and get in the middle of like enemy line.
You managed to avoid it. It's a hostile situation. It's a dangerous situation. And you get people say, "Oh, you push me." Well, go away. Go home then. If it's too hot in the kitchen, go away, because it's not the police for them to walk around a journalist. Oh, you've got this invisible shield around you. No, it isn't. So I remember seeing that, and it's a hostile situation. Is then get out of it. If you're not able to, and don't stand there and wait for a big row of cops to come along, they will mow you over. But I think they're so used to police officers saying, "Oh, do you mind, sir? Do you know, I'm sorry if I'm in your way. Shall I move around you? I do apologize, sir." Not the time or the place, really. But then there's, you've got, there's journalists aren't exactly like, as well, the 3 years in college, university, and then the BBC, you can get someone claiming they're a journalist because they've written one article for the Daily Mail. I'm a journalist. I'm a Daily Mail journalist. Or I'm and actually they've got criminal records as long as your arm, and they hate the police and whatever.
Well, that was definitely the case
as well
in Bristol. All of the local media after those riots. It's funny because it's like, I've never considered myself to be someone that's like, when I think about it, obviously I think the police are really important and I believe in law and order, but I've never been someone that's like spent a huge amount of time being pro-police. But I think part of the reason I made that video and received a load of new followers on Twitter from the police forces is because all the media in Bristol 24/7, Bristol Cable, all these very left-wing media outlets were so critical of the police, and the coverage wasn't remotely balanced. So I almost felt the need to sort of try and put something out there that because I probably would have done the same had all their coverage been balanced in the other direction. Do you know what I mean? It was just the sheer lack of balance. It was like you could criticize aspects of the policing and you could criticize aspects of the protesting, but in Bristol it was just this insanely anti-police narrative. And the particular gentleman I told you about who went viral on Twitter, I was there thinking, almost tempted to wonder whether he did it on purpose. I wouldn't go that far, but you're there thinking, well, he got a lot of attention and he got a lot of, and it just struck me as like I say,
I think people generally, I think the public have got to wisen up a little bit by saying, look, if you want your streets not to be burning, then there needs to be some sort of law and order. And my quote I often use is, sometimes policing isn't pretty. It can look really untidy. And if we're trying to arrest somebody, and it doesn't matter what color they are, it looks much more horrendous if they happen to be black and they are fighting the police. Oh, why? What's he done? He was only smoking a spliff. Well, you're smoking a spliff in front of a copper. A copper comes along and says, "Oi, what are that?" Then he kicks off in front of his face, and then he's a they're fighting the copper because they resisted arrest, because they didn't want to communicate and give them the name of day so that they could be cautioned, warned for the drugs, which they couldn't just ignore. That's what it is. But people think if you want lawlessness, then the police can more than happily go around being very nice to people and not. And I say, what are we meant to only challenge the people who don't who don't fight back? You know, because was it really worth it? You know. So we let the ones go who resist. Is that what you're saying? Because that is what you are actually saying. You know, as long as he comes quietly, well, that's not very fair, is it? But time and time again, you say, well, so what should the officer have done in this case? Well, he should have it was just not needed. Have you ever tried to restrain someone who doesn't want to be arrested? You know, it's not like TV where it's a nice little whoosh, whoosh, and they're all wrapped up with a bow. It's messy.
Yeah,
and I think we just need to wisen up a little bit in this country.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, I completely agree. It's messy, and I think this is the third time I've said it in this interview. I think that the police should be held accountable. They should be criticised when it's necessary, but I also think that it needs to be done in a balanced, reasonable way, and there needs to be an understanding that policing is a difficult job and tackling crime is messy, as you say.
And I don't want to give the impression, Seb, that I'm like, oh no, don't criticise and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Like I said at the beginning, there is clearly something that there's an issue with. There used to be a phrase saying you wouldn't risk your pension on it. You won't hear that anymore because pension isn't worth that much. So you wouldn't risk your pension on it. That kept cops, and for 30 years, they wouldn't nick a penny out of the Woolworths and pick and mix in the old days was the phrase. You wouldn't do it because it's not worth your pension. You know, now that pension is gone, suddenly I was worried it would be a little bit more European, you know, where if you want to get off a speeding ticket, you knew a cop who could get you off it, like you could in Europe. It's so easy now, but that's the problem.
Here's a question, Harry. It's a bit of an uncomfortable question in many ways, and I'm sure you're not going to have a concrete answer, but I do feel like it would be remiss of me not to. Is that the correct phrase? Remiss? I think it'd be remiss of me not to throw it out there. After the whole Sarah Everard incident, I saw a lot of statistics, which I haven't fact checked, about there being much higher rates of domestic abuse in the police than there is in the average population. Do you know if that's true? And do you know anything about that or why it might be if it is true?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. Do you know, I'm more cynical of statistics now because you can make them say whatever you like. What was it in comparison to what with the general public? There are. Can you tie those statistics? Can you remind me? Because I just
do you know what? That's the thing. To be fair, like I say, I haven't actually fact checked it, so I should have done that.
There's clearly where police officers, they go through divorces, they have arguments, they whatever. Again, just be a little bit careful. There's domestics. Nobody wants an argument, but everyone's had an argument. If you've had an argument, that's technically a domestic, which would have been listed in a dash form, which would have been, if neighbours have heard raised voices, that side of things. Because everyone's lives, you have your ups and downs, don't you, sort of thing. So I don't know. Again, I'm not going to give excuses because I'm no doubt there's some cops who clearly were utter bastards and have abused their wives and whatever. There's not, whether it's more generally now than it was before or more than society generally, I'd be very, very doubtful at statistics because I see statistics every day and I know enough to be able to rip them apart.
Yeah, to be honest, it wasn't particularly responsible of me to bring it up without having looked into it properly myself beforehand. But I think there are two things that come to my head. The first thing would be, it would be interesting to compare like domestic abuse or domestic arguments, as you say, between different high stress jobs as well, because the average rate of the population, it might differ depending on the intensity of the work that people do as well.
I'm not so sure. I think it's just very relative. I think it's relative. You're having stress at work. It's just as important to you than it would be for me because I've got a body at the end of mine. Right. It doesn't make it more.
Yeah. Well, on the topic of that, actually, I was going to ask. Oh, sorry.
Go on.
No, I was going to ask you. Let's move on from that. I was going to ask you about, when you're witnessing horrific events on the side of the road, you're witnessing people suffer, you're witnessing people die. Presumably, over time, you become more hardened to that. Have you, or do you not? Could you tell me about that process?
I think it's coping mechanisms. What did I find? I didn't know, first of all, with the first post-mortem, I've attended an awful lot of forensic post-mortems as well and things, whether I'd fall over and faint. You have no idea what you're going to do when you see your first body. You have no control, do you? I then found them very fascinating. Like, let's get down to this. Let's find out. When the pathologist is holding the clot that caused the heart attack that killed the driver, which meant he died before he crashed, not because he crashed. That sort of thing, when and I've had a 6-year-old child post-mortem to establish, okay, was he in the middle of running when he was struck by the vehicle, or was he standing in the middle of the road? Should the driver have seen him in his blind spot? As far as road traffic collisions, that side of things, for me, I explain it in Firearms and Fatals, really. For me, my method was, I'm not a spiritual person. I don't believe in God. I think when we're dead. Much simple that way. I don't particularly believe, I never liked the bully in the playground who said, join my gang, otherwise I'll beat you up. No, I didn't like that. So I stay away from all that religion stuff. Therefore, when I see a body in the street, I see an overcoat. The soul has gone. When I say the soul, I don't necessarily mean the spirit who then lives elsewhere. When you see someone who's alive and then you see them dead, they look very different. Their expression in their face is incredibly different. It's blank, colorless, featureless, and they've gone. It is a shell. So I don't, and if you think about it, you can cut some meat up and pour some blood on it, and it's like, oh, that's nasty, we'll cut it up. Oh dear, that's even worse. Okay, but then it comes to a point where you can only do it so much. It doesn't look any worse. And the way I explain it, to me, it's much more squeamish, where you dress the person in jeans and t-shirt and they're pretty much untouched. That's quite squeamish, because they look as though they can just stand up and walk away. And that's the things that would give me a little bit of a, that's dear, that's not so good,
Can you?
So yeah, I didn't think I coped with it very well, because I didn't think of them as people anymore. You treat them with the respect, because they are someone's loved one, the remains of someone's loved one. And so they would always have a blanket, or they would, but that's why I would always, though, as a senior investigating officer in Fatals, I always insisted I saw the body and I looked at their face, because I wanted a connection, so the family knew that I had connected with that person. It was a silly thing, but I had to do it. Someone under a blanket, they're dead. Why am I looking at them? I would go over and I just felt it was a bit of a duty to look at them in the face, to see that person.
That's very interesting. So you weren't obliged to do that. You just decided that gave you a more human appreciation of what you were
because you didn't want it. Yeah, because there'd be a danger. Otherwise, it was a statistic. It was just another road traffic collision.
Right.
You just maybe it was just to remind myself that no, there's a person at the end of this as well.
That's funny. That almost seems at odds with how you began the answer, because you began the answer by saying
it is, isn't it?
Yeah. So it seems like you're correcting. You're correcting
maybe
the robotic
I was slightly
part.
cautious. Yeah, maybe that was it. Maybe the fact that I was worried that I would dismiss it so much as a person, I needed to just remind myself a little bit.
It sounds like a very, for want of a better term, healthy practice. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a.
Got me through.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was actually something I was going to ask. Like, the fear that I would have were I to regularly see dead bodies, regularly be telling families that their loved ones had passed away, that I would become more immune to it over time, which I suppose would be part of carrying out the job. But the issue I would have with that, I would worry that emotional immunity may start creeping into other areas of my life, and that I might find it more difficult to navigate the emotional side of my life in personal relationships with other people.
The ironic thing is, I'm the biggest soppiest git you can get. I'll cry at Britain's Got Talent, or a bad advert. It's just, I'm like, oh, okay, hang on there. And so it's the emotion side of things. It's, to be honest, I think I set off earlier than most. And you think, God, he's going to be a disaster dealing with this job. But maybe it was that sort of release as well, that I was able to do that. You clearly see I talk a lot. I never talked at home about it. But my colleagues around us, I'd always get them going. I'd always say, "Oh, Dave, did you go to were you first at the scene at that one?" "Oh, no, it wasn't me, but it was so-and-so." He went, "Oh, right, what was it?" "Oh, bloody hell, Sarge, it was messy. He had a so-and-so. I'm like, and you get them talking then. That's how you do the diffusing. And it's, "Oh yeah, remind me of a hanging I went to, blah, blah, blah." I remember this conversation. We ended up going to a hanging in the woods then in that conversation. And that person, "Oh, mate, I didn't know you'd gone to that one." Yeah, I bloody found him, didn't I?" And it is getting them to talk about it in that trusted group.
And you think that gives a sort of ability to vent, like almost it has a therapeutic aspect to it by just getting people to communicate about it.
Yeah, because if you get a bunch of cops and you go, "Right, we're going to diffuse. I've got some bourbons. Have a cup of tea. Right, we're going to talk about this. How did you feel? How do you feel?" They'll just shut down. It's false.
Yeah. Okay, you have to try and make it organic and genuine. I do find the contrast, the internal contrast within yourself. I do find that fascinating that you were able to just view dead bodies on the side of the road as just like overcoats where their soul has gone, and not be too emotionally affected by it. And yet you'll tear up at mundane things like Britain's Got Talent.
I think it's true. I think maybe it's a safety mechanism. I don't know. Their psychologists would have a field day, wouldn't they?
Yeah. But I think it's good. I think it would be much more worrying if you weren't in touch with your internal emotional life and you weren't in touch with the events that you saw. Were there any particularly harrowing, grotesque, memorable, shocking moments when you were called to a fatal collision that really stand out to you?
There's the one slightly gory one where, because you knew it was going to happen, the car had rolled over onto its roof and the person wasn't wearing his seatbelt, and it was a very gentle roll. It was up an Armco on the side, and it just rolled over, and the person fell out of the window, and the feet were just under the pedals stretched, and the head was underneath the roof that was upside down. So we knew that was going to look nice bringing this one up. Because the whole weight of the car was on it. And of course, I remember it was like the Scream mask. It was like that, that Scream mask. It was just like a bag. And that one pokes up now and then, cheeky little one. But the car of 4 teenagers that lost it and side on into a wall, they looked as though they could just open the door and walk out, jeans and t-shirt, pretty much untouched, all dead. That was that one. And then, of course, there was the 6-year-old child, because guess what? My twins were 6 years old. And as I walked up to my armed response guy who was doing CPR, I just saw his little legs bouncing as he's doing CPR on this kid. He'd been hit by this car, thrown 11 meters and then driven over with spinning wheels, sort of thing. So, and you automatically think, "My God, that's my son. That's my son." It's not your son, but it looks like yours. It's his knees, it's his shorts, it's his shirt. And ironically, the ARV guy who was doing CPR, his nephew was that age, and the family liaison officer had a child that age. And I said to the ARV guy, who was going to be officer in the case, normally they're first on the scene, they've got a grip of it. I said, "Glenn, you're not going to be OIC on this one." And he went, "Sarge, I am going to be OIC on this one." He was very definite on that one. So it gets them really personally on that. And you think, so that, it's quite an event you go through really to do that.
I know we touched on this a minute ago, but I just want to be a little bit more specific and clear. Did it affect your mental health in a negative way at all? Or were you able to witness an event like that and then go home at the end of the day, have a cup of tea, put your feet up like any other day? Or were there times where you just needed to be on your own and decompress? Or did you really become immune to it as part of the job?
I personally could switch it off and I'd go home and I'd come back to it the next day. And the next day it was, right, let's get down to this. Okay, forensic post-mortem. Okay. Post-mortem with a 6-year-old child, that's going to be interesting. Okay. The dignity they gave that body was just beautiful, really, that the mortuary staff gave. It was so much, because usually with an adult, it is sort of like, it's like chunk, chunk, chunk and all that. But this was beautifully handled with grace, and it was so sweet, really. And it was like, okay, let's get the evidence. Let's see what's happened. let's see if somebody needs to come to justice or whether it's just a terrible accident, and so yeah, no, it was then so lucky. And each one you think, wow, you see them, everyone falling around you. And you think, even Devon and Cornwall, they were, oh, where's so-and-so? Oh, he's gone off sick for a few weeks. Oh, okay. And you think, is it me next time? I feel okay, but they felt okay. Is it the next one? It's just that one other one, isn't it? The one little cheeky one that gives you a nibble.
Harry, I'm going to ask you.
You got a far better tan than me here. I'm not liking this. I'm looking pale and pasty, and I'm in Cornwall.
Yeah, no, I do get quite lucky with that. Actually, I get a tan very easy and it stays. I only have to go in the sun for about half an hour, and I'm brown for about a week, which is great. But right, I'm going to ask you a question now. And I think I can probably predict that your answer is going to be no, but I'm going to ask you anyway. And then when you say no, I'm going to challenge you on your answer. Ooh. Okay. Do you enjoy arresting people?
No.
What if they're being a proper dickhead?
Do you know what I think? Because my honest answer, arresting people, I automatically think of all the paperwork. I'm probably going to be late home now. The fact that I need to then take them, if it's anywhere near the middle of the end of the shift, and then I'm not going to get off late turn early, which means I can't go now to where I wanted to go tomorrow until later or whatever. And that's what I'm thinking. If they're a real dickhead, like you say, it is usually... It wasn't satisfying anymore, because the criminal justice system doesn't give them the good just desserts. And what you get, they go to court and they don't turn up, so it's adjourned. But they've got the police officer, me, then to turn up at court to be the witness, and my rest day's been cancelled. And because I was on nights, and I can't, and I need to turn up for court, I can't do that night shift, but I can't do the night shift before either. And so therefore all my shifts are split round. I have to cancel my rest days, and I have to, and it's just a nightmare. And what do they get? A £25 fine. Yeah.
And I suppose there's so many dickheads out there that you're not going to be able to eradicate them all via arrest anyway.
They are. I used to get more fun. The fun with the dickheads were easy because you would sort of say, see the freedom I have. The freedom you'd have, and they'd go, like that. And you remember when, they'd have their matching gear and all that. And I'd go, oh, bless him. Look, he's got a hat that matches and everything, and you turn their friends against them. And therefore, and then it's like, you get a little 16-year-old or 15-year-old with a cigarette, like, like that. You can't, and I don't care what they say. I said, I think you look really grown up. And they go, and they're like, and their mates are then laughing at them. Or if they were really a little bit dense in a public order or something, and you just diffuse it that way by just saying, look, I don't wish to patronize you. That means to talk down to you. And then of course, their friends would realize that. And once you've got their friends laughing at them, that really diffuses that one individual person. And they start to absorb their way in. So rather than escalate it into a stop being a cheeky sod or whatever, and arresting them, there are hopefully other ways, especially for that really minor public thing, because usually it's a bit of bravado. I'm the big lad with the cop, And so if you could diffuse that by saying, oh, bless you, you look so hard.
Yeah. Okay, so you don't enjoy arresting people because it's paperwork, it takes up a lot of your time, and even when someone's acting like a dickhead, you can't arrest them all. However, I have watched your YouTube channel and I have heard you relay some stories about 140 mile per hour car chases.
Oh yeah.
There must presumably be some occasions when you're chasing someone at 140 miles per hour and they run out the car and you chase after them, you rugby tackle them. That must be an arrest you enjoy, surely.
Okay, the exception to, there's a Hercules flying low level across Port Island, beautiful. See, big machines and stuff. Total exception, Seb. Love it. You get into a pursuit, and very quickly, and I had few very late on in my last couple of months, we had lots of pursuits going down in Tall Bay, and you get into sort of rhythm, and you go, good, they're not going to they ain't going to get away, and then you're thinking, right, starburst, it's going to be a starburst, where is it? And you've got the helicopter coming in, you've got dog units coming in, and you've got, this is the bit right, we can't mess this up now, we can't have this and then lose them on a foot chase. And then when they're all arrested, and then you are actually doing the write-up and you're buzzing. You think, whoa, bloody good. Did you see? Look, have a look at the video. And look, he's throwing beer cans out the window at us, cheeky sod, And, it's sort of, but that's it. Yeah, that's the exception, Seb. I'll let you off that one.
What's the most exciting? What's the most exciting car chase that you were involved in?
Oh, yeah, probably. I tell you what, after those 30 years, I've never lost a car chase. I've never lost a foot chase. And there's something, I had a plain car, and it was and this was in the last couple of months. And I had a pursuit, and it was a BMW, I can't remember, it was a high performance. And all they did was headed for the most narrow parts in the middle of the night. And they knew the roads really well, and they were trying to shake me off. And I was in a plain vehicle, and on the steering wheel, they put the blue lights, the sirens. So I'm doing commentary, going through, thinking I'm okay here. And then as I turned the wheel, because it was tight turning, and then they would fly across the junction. I'd judge it to see, is this getting too dangerous? I'd have to slow for the junction, then make up speed, catch them up with the bends where they're slowing perhaps, or whatever. And then I found, I've got no blue lights. Where's my blue lights? I'm now driving a plain vehicle at 60 miles an hour through a 30 mile an hour limit in tight roads with no. So I've got to wait. I've knocked it off. I've got to slow, turn the blue lights on, get on again. And it did it again. So it was a sort of fault that I reported back by saying, you're just hitting these things. And in a plain vehicle, especially at night, driving it fast is dangerous. And you have to then, and I lost him the first time in 30 years. 2 months before the end of my career. I was gutted until a pursuit 2 weeks later on, and I caught him again. And I'd sort of, I still lost that one. No, okay. Not the same guy.
Okay.
I never really did know who that guy was. Yeah. But it was a good chase, and he ended up in the front window of a shop and that was all over the place. That was Torbay at 4 a.m. And he was the one throwing.
Could you describe... Could you describe that from beginning to end in terms of like, what was he fleeing the scene of a crime, or was it a call you got for dangerous driving? What happened in that story? What took place?
There was a group of guys that were just delivering their drugs, moving their drugs around, and because of the panda cars and there's certain restrictions with who can pursue, they were having carte blanche. There was a lawlessness basically where they would just, panda car would pull them over and they'd just drive off into the distance. And because the qualifications, the type of vehicles and whatever, they couldn't pursue. And so you take the registration numbers, and they're sort of pool vehicles. So, people are sharing, all the criminals are sharing these one vehicles, or else they're stolen vehicles, or they've certainly got no insurance. People who are driving them are regularly in and out of prison, got no driving licenses, probably on drugs, that sort of thing. You've got this going around Torbay permanently. And so they bring the armed response in, and the traffic, the dual rolled with armed response, dual rolled with traffic in Devon and Cornwall, bring them in, and then we basically hunt them down. Plain vehicles, get the helicopters so it's actually nearby or whatever as well, stationed nearby, and then we find one because you've got CCTV and that side of things. And what you try to do is do sneaky beaky so that they're heading towards an area, they don't know you're behind. And then you've got a stinger. You just sting them straight away before they know it. Yeah, just so if you can avoid that pursuit, all the better. It might be fun, but whilst you've got a pursuit, you've got danger, and you could involve innocent people. Mm-hmm. So once it starts, now I know, right, he's felt to stop, and he's seen me, he's off, and he's going up the road one way. Now I know I am. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. It's dead as anything. You're still looking at a few pedestrians and a few cars going around about, and he's going all the way around Torbay trying to shake me off. I know that, especially if it was come through, it went up Union Street the opposite way. No problems doing that. I say, I'm looking, I've got good view, and I'm pulling back. I just pull right back so I can't be seen to be pushing him into it. I'm trying to slow him down, actually, because I don't want him to rush ahead against the one way, no traffic on it whatsoever, and then go head on. Because if he goes head on with someone, I know I'm the one in the shit. I shouldn't be, but so this is where I say, public should decide, do they want us to pursue or not? You decide, don't make your mind up afterwards just because it's got messy. Anyway, it ended up, and he lost it on a bend, and I then rammed him into a shop front, gallery near the clock tower. It wasn't too much damage. And I looked in there whilst, and there was a really good painting in there I wanted to get, actually, but it's quite expensive. But while you're waiting around.
So, yeah, it sounds really interesting.
He was the one with the full cans of beer, and they literally get out right out the side of the car, and they're throwing these cans at my car. And I'm dodging them.
That's hilarious. So, look, I think we should draw this conversation to a close because we've been talking for a while now, and I have got so many potential conversation directions, potential questions, potential topics which we haven't even touched on, which is a shame. But I think we could probably talk for about 4 or 5 hours. But let's.
I think so.
Let's try and bring it to a close. Let me ask you a couple of questions to end it. What's the most standout story from your career? Whether it be something funny, something scary, something shocking, proud, high, low, unexpected, a moment that you feared for your life, or a moment which is just hilarious. Or I'd like to save the David Cameron story for the end. So that one to one side. Is there anything else that really stands out? Is there any other stories, perhaps from your book, or that you often like to tell?
I am terrible at coming up with these things because I think, was it really that dull? And then I come across one and go, oh my God, that was amazing. It is the ones that had most effect on me are the ones, I got into the road death investigation because I realized that was where you're involving people that were 10 minutes beforehand, had no idea that they were going to be in that situation, either having caused the death or are lying dead in the road sort of thing. And I think the 6-year-old child is the one where I think everyone got together and brought the whole thing together. And actually that went to Crown Court. And the guy was an ordinary guy. And I think it was because this lad was 6 years old and it was at Quad World in Plumpton. And he was driving to go into Quad World to deliver the offender, if you like, to deliver his son to Quad World because it was his birthday. And basically he got hit. There was a misunderstanding with the car overtaking, thought he'd stationary, but actually he was waiting to turn right into Quad World because he had a broken wing mirror, door mirror. He didn't actually see, didn't probably do a proper shoulder check, turned right in front of this, crashed. And that should have been it. Should have been damage only. But he banged his head, so he slammed his foot on what he thought was brake. It was the accelerator, and he went through the hedge, hit this lad, knocked him 11 meters, still wheel spinning over him, killed him outright. And I remember interviewing him thinking, this he's suicidal. He doesn't see a way how he can go through his life that every time his son has a birthday, it's on that birthday that lad would have been that age on that day. That constant reminder. It went to Crown Court because it was like you asked 5 different cops, they had 5 different reasons. Well, and I think it ended up right. Prosecution gave their evidence. Defense said, we're happy to leave it there without giving our defense judge if you think there's no foot. And the judge said, yeah, no, I think that's fine. There was no intent. There was no negligence. It's one of those horrendous things. But he's got to live with that. And that family's going to go home. I just remember the vision. That was it. Of my mate doing CPR, the mum and the dad over this body, holding the hand of the 11-year-old child. Gets me even now, Yeah. So that one stands on to funnier things.
onto funnier things. So let's end this with the story of all stories. Harry, what happened with David Cameron and the kayak?
Well, he gave me permission to use this in the book and use his name, and I never thought he would. So I just published the book without actually asking him, and then I thought I will leave it in there for a bit of mystique. But so basically, what happened? So the Met come down, and I was sort of liaison officer. So we are armed. We're armed, and we do the for prime ministers and things like that. And royalty, we get locked down here. I do that sort of stuff in London as well. I did as well. But so he's on his holidays. It's well known where he stays in sort of Cornwall. And so he has to have some sort of arm protection around at all times. And we might be in shorts, T-shirts, whatever. But he wanted to go kayaking with his son. And so I would go give him a bit of, I didn't take a gun with me. I didn't think we'd be attacked by pirates this time. So I thought I'd just have the radio. Nobody really knows where he was at this stage. It's not advertised. So I would just give an update on the radio. The Met said, well, I haven't done a kayaking course. And I thought, well, I've just been to Portugal, so I'll be all right. Oh, yeah. We're quite, on the Cornish coast, we're pretty good with the water sports.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we started off, and I gave him a nice bit of privacy as he's talking to his son on this double canoe kayak. And then I realized I'm getting a bit sluggish, a bit heavy. And I remember thinking, right, okay, well, there's the shore. I'm going to go to shore, radio, saying, got a bit problem. Went to shore, tipped it up, poured it out. And I thought, well, okay, I've been going for an hour and a half, and it's that much. I've got half an hour left. I should be okay. Went back, launched it again, caught him up. And then I'm really, because we turned a corner and the tide was much heavier. And I was flooding like a good one. And I went, when you're paddling sort of thing, and it goes, and you go, and all the water goes from one side to another inside. And I was like, I'm not going to make it. So I get to shore, and the kayak flips over, and I see DC and his son disappearing off into the distance to go around the corner to be met by the others. And I'm now in my Quicksilver shirt, my shorts and my sandals, my God-fearing sandals, and I am now paddling across. And I'm seeing these people in their posh yachts, and they're doing barbecues on the back of their yachts, and they're going, are you all right? I say, yeah, fine, thanks. I get to shore, and I'm wringing wet, and I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to be calling helicopters, lifeboats. It's like a mile apart. This is so embarrassing. My phone, everything's dead. The radio's dead. Can't radio. There's one thing for it. Posh yacht club. And I just walk in there, squelch, 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 squelch. And I thought you just got to do this with style. And I went on the bar and said, barman, I seem to have sunk. Could I borrow your phone? And, and he was like, handed me the phone. And I called the control room and I said, I didn't tell them everything at that point. I had a good laugh with them afterwards. Got lifted up by the Met, you can imagine, got back. And there's David Cameron, and he insisted on calling me Bob after that. And I understand he uses it for his after dinner speeches that he was doing at the time as well. Oh, and he said, yeah, he says wishes you well in his retirement, and says he's more than happy for you to use his name. But
that's hilarious. All right, one last question. In fact, what was the proudest moment of your policing career?
Oh, I really haven't been very proud. It's imposter syndrome all the time.
Right,
imposter syndrome.
Oh well, I know all about that.
I think sergeant rank. I never thought I would achieve it. I haven't got A levels, and to do sergeants, it's like an A level. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of practicals. It's interview boards. I passed everything first time and then failed the interview board. I was too smug. Thought I could rely on experience. And then I learned about keywords and stuff like that. And that was it. I think I was probably a better sergeant than I was a PC, to be honest. So I think that was the proudest moment. I like that bit.
Good man, mate. Like I say, I feel like we could talk all day. There's so much that we haven't got through, but it's been a couple of hours now, so I will let you crack on with your afternoon. But just before we go, Harry, is there anywhere that people can find you that you would like, social media accounts, websites, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, thank you. I've got it's my Twitter is the main thing. Says XARV Sergeant, so it's EX _ARV SGT. I am on Instagram, Facebook, but I don't really do that very much. You can get me on YouTube, Harry Tangye. Don't do so much on there, but there's a lot of stuff about dealing with conflict, Red Death, and that side of things. I get Frontline Chat. Frontline Chat is one I do with Dave Wardell from Finn's Law. He was on Britain's Got Talent. He's a serving police officer. And we've got that on stage, Palace Theatre, 12th of March, and we've got it in Leeds and Halifax in April. So, yeah.
got it
It's
all
all
going
happening.
on. I'll
Thank
be
you,
sure.
sir.
I'll be sure to include links to all of that in the description
Thank
of this
you.
video for everyone that wants to check it out. Yeah, Harry, thanks a lot for joining me today. I'm really glad we got around to having this conversation. It was an absolute pleasure to speak to you, mate. Thanks a lot.
Likewise, sir. Likewise. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.